Hello everyone, I'm Newsham, and for today's Proguides video I'm going to be doing a replay analysis for the offlane. We're mainly going to be focusing on the laning stage, and we're going to be following this player in particular, Monkeys Forever. Plays for 4 Zoomers, they're doing really good right now. He's also pretty high rated, I think he's like 9k or something, ranked 24 in NA, so should be good. We're going to be looking at current meta trends, what people are doing, and mainly seeing how to apply pressure in the offlane, because right now this meta is very slow, a lot of really safe carries that just want to farm, and being able to bully them as an offlaner is super important, so we'll get right into that. Alright, so before we jump right into the Monkeys Forever replay, I wanted to show some of the trends right now for the early game, like especially the starting items for offlaners right now. One trend I noticed when I coach some lower rated players compared to the high rated players, like Lelis for example here is ranked 21, and next I'll be looking at Brax who's like rank 8 or something. They think a lot harder about their laning stage, and if it's important enough, they will prioritize getting early stats compared to, I see like low rated players, they'll rush boots or blight stones, random items like that, or even like a stick sometimes, when sometimes stats is actually better because you can tank up. So like, for example here I'll show, well, this gets like an early bracer, or another example here with Brax. On Darkseer, he'll get like an early circlet, and then as you can see he goes 2 null talismans, which I can almost guarantee is because he's versus Spectre and he wants to apply that pressure constantly. So he's making sure that he's matching the Spectre in terms of early game items so that he can keep applying the pressure, because what a lot of carries are doing right now is they're getting early Wraith bans and stuff, so being able to actually lane against them usually requires some sort of early game help. You can't just, you know, rush a mech or something. Alright, so back to the replay that I picked out. So the main reason why I picked this replay is because I thought it was really interesting what Monkeys has been doing. He's been kind of setting the trend, more or less, with Wraith bans on melee strength offlaners because of the 5 agi plus the 1.5 armor. It's basically 2 armor and then you get a bunch of attack speed. It's really good for the lane, so like sometimes you'll get even 2 Wraith bans. Obviously in this game he went up Bracer, but I'm assuming it's because there's a lot of magic damage between like, you know, Luna and Skywrath and Tiny. So he's just favoring tanking up a little bit more with more strength. But overall I thought it was really interesting and I just wanted to show that off. So let's just jump right in. So before we start watching the lane, and we're just going to be watching him, you know, buy items or whatever happens in the early game, I just wanted to talk about a bit of how exactly these players come to these conclusions when they're building their items. You know, maybe one game would call for like an early blink on a hero, or maybe you want to be a bit greedier and get a Midas, right? So the way that I know a lot of players think about laning stages is they will compare, usually it's like the core matchup, so if they're an offlaner, they'll compare it to the safe laner. Obviously if you're like a mid player, it's much easier. Just look at the enemy mid, but, you know, so if you're a core, you just gotta correspond to the opposite role that you're going to be laning against. So when you're thinking about the stuff I was talking about earlier, about like what you're going to be playing for in the lane, you want to think about lane positioning and what exactly it means. So for example, if you're trying to out CS them and you don't want them to have an easy time, you might want to just sit it here, it's not a big deal. But if, let's say your goal is to try to kill the Luna or like create some pressure scenario, you're going to be going for kills, you can maybe pull the lane back here, so there's a lot more room that the safe laner has to run back to their tower to get safe. So basically their choice is to either come up and try to get CS and then potentially die, or they're forced to just sit here and kind of get, you know, they have to just sit there and watch the offlaner play Dota while they're just, I don't know, sitting in trees. But the risk of doing this, and why I assume they aren't trying to do that, is because if the lane is pushed up like this for the safe laner, then they're going to simply just walk over here and try to pull the small camp. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it here. One thing I notice when I watch lower rated players that I've coached try to play offlane is they think that creep aggroing creeps like Monkeys is doing here is really good, so they'll do it, which is fine, but they won't actually think about these range creeps. And the reason why I even brought it to my attention is if you see Monkey's camera positioning here on his player perspective, clearly there's a focus on these range creeps. You can see that the camera's kind of centered around it. And you can tell even before something's about to happen, there's a huge emphasis on like playing around these range creeps. Rubik's probably going to try to fade bolts. Monkeys might even try to walk up and like hit this guy before he can go for the deny and then get it himself. Some sort of play around the range creep. I know I've heard better players say that they like, quote, hold it hostage, like the range creep. Basically you want to put this scenario in front of like the carry or whoever's in the lane, even the supports, where basically they want to go for this range creep because they want the EXP, because in case you don't know why it's important, the range creeps actually give about double EXP than a melee creep. So the difference of denying them can be potentially you hitting level 2 first, or even level 3 first, you know, and so forth. It's just gonna snowball. So let's see what they do here. Yeah, see Rubik goes for it. Monkeys is clearly trying to focus on this as well. But yeah, I've watched some worse players, they'll like pull the lane back all the way here to the next wave coming in, and they won't even be paying attention to the range creeps. They won't even be in EXP range, so just something to think about. And again, you can see huge emphasis on the range creep. His camera was centered on it, he immediately runs in. Maybe he doesn't get it, obviously he did there, but you know, the point is, even if he got it or not, he's trying really hard to get these range creeps, even like the deny there, right? So when you push the lane in like that too, what happens is you could potentially go for a side pull here, so that's what they tried to do. Obviously the other team just stopped it, because it's a pretty high rated game. I mean, the main's, you know, rank 54. And again, Rubik nukes the range creep. Yeah, pretty standard stuff. I'm sure this is going to be rinse and repeat for a bit until their first items come out. So here they're going for a fight. Oof. So he ends up dying on starter, but it's actually not that big of a deal. I'm going to go ahead and pause it and talk about it for a bit. So right here, it might look bad, but on the net worth it's actually not that bad. He already got a lot from the first few waves of creeps, and he had a lot of gold, right? So instead of waiting for the courier to come out, he can just buy out his items, and then he's going to just simply TP back in. So it's actually not that bad. So when you're playing versus heroes like Bane or 5-rolls that are going to sit there and try to hit you a lot and spend spells on you, just to make it so you can't lane as well, something like Undying is really popular right now, or I don't know, even AA is okay at it. Basically, you want to try to match your regen to what your goal in the lane is. So again, if you're thinking about these things, like before the game starts, you can think about, okay, maybe I'll need to buy, you know, another set of tangos in the lane, or maybe I need to rush a stick. So you need to kind of like match the demand of the regen for the lane and make sure you plan out properly. And yeah. So here, obviously, Monkeys didn't have that much regen, but I don't think he actually cared, like I said. So when he dies, he just buys out his stats. So basically, when he comes back in, even though he doesn't have a Quelling Blade, he has so many stats, he actually hits pretty hard. So he actually doesn't really need a Quelling Blade. And the stats that he gets earlier from not spending gold on other items like a Quelling Blade, basically, he's going to be able to soak up a lot more damage. Because at the end of the day, of all the core roles, the offlaner is, you know, he's like a space maker, right? He doesn't really care if he gets that much farm. Obviously, you want to try to win your lane and get farm, but like, at the end of the day, if someone's going to not get the best amount of farm, they're going to go, you know, like some 40, 60, not great lane stage, it's going to be an offlaner, right? They don't mind. Yeah, so far they're doing an excellent job, even though Monkeys is, you know, below the Luna. He's still 4th in net worth overall. Like, I feel like that's really good. You know, some people would look at these items and be like, what am I looking at? There's no Quelling Blade here. You know, there's no magic stick or something. Oh, well. You know, as I say that, he gets it, but... So again, they're just pushing the lane out, and I'm sure Rubik will try to pull, or... You know, let's say you're in like a low-rated game and the Rubik isn't very reliable. He's not pulling, he doesn't really know what he's doing. You could even just walk over and pull yourself as the offlaner. I think the Rubik missed the pull, maybe he's going for a stack. Looks like he's going for a stack. So I assume they're going to just try to make this camp get a lot of creeps so they can start denying as many creeps as they can. Because I don't know if anyone's ever been in this situation where they're, you know, they're trying to pull these creeps and they pull it over, but there's only like one tiny creep left, you know, like a small potato. And it would only kill like one creep. And then it kind of just doubles up your wave and it'll push in the tower, and then the safe laner can just farm it. So, you know, the goal of the pulling is to like deny some creeps away from the carry and like pull the lane back, but if there's not actually creeps, neutral creeps, sorry, to kill your lane creeps, then it's just going to simply shove into the safe laner. It's like doing the opposite effect of why you were pulling in the first place, right? So it's really important to think about these things, like before you pull, know why you're pulling. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. If you see these stats he's getting, like, he's able to just straight up fight a Bane Luna, and these heroes are really strong laners. Like, Rubik is okay in lane. He's better with like a melee strength hero, like, you know, Slardar, so that's why this lane's working out good, but honestly, it's really easy for Rubik to feel really weak in lane. And I could easily see this lane going in favor of Dire with the Bane and the Luna. I feel like this item build, personally for me, it's making it, you know. What would, you know, like a Boots Rush do here? You would have much less HP, much, like less armor. I don't know, I just feel like these items are the current trend for this meta. And they're just going on them again, right? This is crazy. Anyways, so right here, the Bane ends up getting away, and the Luna has to use his regen. But honestly, this isn't that bad for Slardar, even though they did not die. If you can get a free kill, you should obviously take it, but sometimes forcing people to sit here in lane with like minimal HP, especially with the new courier nerf, where if you have regen on the courier, it actually sends out slower. Basically, they're going to be sitting here waiting for their regen, and you're going to be healthy, and you get to lane for free, right? And obviously it'd be better for the Luna to be low, because he's the one who wants to get the farm. But this Bane being low and not being able to help the Luna, and he's starting to get 2v1'd, is basically just as bad as if the Luna was low himself. You can tell Monkeys is just really comfortable on it. He's just not taking any risks. He's just playing to what, I don't know, some sort of phase in the game that he's probably comfortable with, right? He's trying to, you know, get this tower, and he's probably just trying to make a lot of space for his Spectre. Instead of going to the Spectre's lane, he's trying to force some scenario here where either he forces them here or he takes the tower, right? And then if they come here to fight him, the Spectre can just simply haunt in, people can TP up, etc. Like you can even see right here, this guy's here and he could have, you know, maybe fought him. Maybe someone would have done that. But clearly the emphasis here is for the pressure, right? The map pressure. He's trying to get this tower. That's all he cares about. He's trying to get this Titan to go away and try to take the tower. You know, he went with catapults, and again, he even dies for oh my god. He's even getting chat wheeled. You know, it happens to everyone, but even with that death, honestly, if I were Monkeys, I wouldn't really feel that bad about it. You know, obviously he wants the tower and he didn't want to die, but he gets the tower nonetheless. You know, now they get entrance into their jungle. The SF even walks up here. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and back up a little bit, because we're watching Monkey's player perspective and he's actually watching the fight. And I just wanted to talk about a few things. So one, as you can see his item build, now that he has these laning items, his power treads and the stats and whatnot, he's trying to be useful for his team, right? So now he's thinking, okay, you know, do I want like a Vlad's? I'm sure he's thinking stuff like that. And he decides to go for a pipe because of all the magic damage. So just something to think about, how you want to like naturally think about these things in game. So here's what I wanted to look at. So he sees all this going on, right? And he's still just hitting his jungle creep. You know, this guy's low, someone might feel pressured to run here, but literally all he's doing is just watching, right? Now he starts running because he realizes the fight's going on still. But I'm gonna go ahead and pause and talk about what he was actually doing. So he's here, and basically from this lane being here, and instead of showing on this wave, he's basically using the pressure of this lane pushing in. He assumes someone will come up here, and he's just waiting here to basically go mess with them. Either shove them out and make them waste their time by coming up here, and then they actually don't get the farm. Or, you know, maybe he even gets a kill. So instead he just hides off the map in fog and just hits this creep camp right here. And the reason why he didn't run over here is because he wants to, you know, apply this pressure atop. And he didn't actually think he could get here in time, obviously, because, I mean, this guy barely lived, right? He was getting gripped. I'm assuming what Monkeys thought was, oh, this guy's just dead, so I'm just going to keep doing my thing top. But obviously, as soon as the SF got his ult off and stuff, you saw him like run from here down to here for a second, trying to maybe, you know, potentially go help him. And then, yeah, as soon as he sees that the SF is fine, he just goes and does his thing again. He shoves in the lane, and then he just keeps getting his own items, right? He's worrying about his own game. The pressure really starts here in the offlane, so... As you can see, Monkeys even recognizes that. He just runs right back up here. Because even though they don't feel pressured to do anything, right, they're confident that their late game will scale better, they still don't want to, like, take their foot off the pedal, you know what I mean? They don't want to stop applying pressure just because that's the case. Like, they want to, like, earn their jungle time, if that makes sense. Like, the lane creeps being shoved in is what's buying them time to allow them to be greedy and go hit jungle creeps. Because if it weren't for this up here, their lanes and their whole map would just start collapsing on them. They'd be stuck to, like, you know, trying to defend this tower, and then Dire's just sitting in their jungle like they're already doing, but, like, it'd be even worse. The only lane that's being pressured right now is this off lane. The game's actually pretty even right now, so we'll see what happens next, I guess. It's actually crazy that Monkeys does not concern himself with any of this stuff going on. Not all, as I said, ATPs, but like, this whole game he's pretty much just been focusing on sitting top. Basically, with a lot of these carries, like Spectre or Terrorblade, applying pressure for them is the best way to relieve their pressure. So like this right here, for example, and then obviously a fight breaks out, that's just how Dota is sometimes. But like what's important is conceptually, right, is if your carry's feeling pressured, because like say his lane's going bad, because the Spectre was 0-3 at the start, now he's 3-3. what a lot of people might do is, you know, this guy's crying on his mic like, oh, I'm 0-3, I can't lane, I have to go jungle, or oh, I can't hit jungle because I'm Spectre, and I blah blah blah. And then suddenly everyone's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna help this guy, and they're going to like gank his lane and do all this stuff, right? Usually that's not actually the way to help these carries in this meta. It's actually to go to the other lanes, you know, go run at the mid tower, go run at the offlane tower, and then go take over their jungle. That's actually what allows these people to go get back into the game. Because, I mean, look at this. Spectre's now 3rd on net worth, but if you rewind back, like, during the laning stage, I mean, Spectre's farming, right? But he's 0-2, like, he's not having the best laning stage. He's even with this Luna, who's also dying. That's like, you know, we're comparing them, but at the end of the day, they're both having really rough laning stages. Like, the offlaners are actually the highest net worths, the Tiny and the Slardar. Well, for the side lanes, you know. Obviously the mid laners or whatever, but as far as, like, the side lanes go, the offlaners are actually the highest net worths. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and pause it here and just take a look at items and stuff to talk about how the laning phase really changed what happened in the game. So, Monkey's items, he looks not that bad, not that great either, but apparently he's, you know, 4th on net worth, so much better than I thought. But I wanted to take a look at the Luna, right? The person who's impacted by all the decisions that he made. So this Luna, basically because his early game got messed up a bit, in order to be able to even fight off the Spectre, because again, Spectre's going to outscale him, right? So he's trying to basically combat that by building early game items. So from his rough laning stage, he's forced to, you know, go drums, and he's just super far behind, right? The Spectre has drums as well, but he has a Manta. You know, this guy only has a Yasha. And yeah, as you can see, they're just starting to run away with the game. There's not much more to really even talk about at this point. It's just pretty grim. Alright, so they kind of just blow them up. So it looks like the game's just kind of over. So I'm going to go ahead and pause and talk a little bit about summary of what we talked about, basically.
Radiant structures are fortified.
So the way these better players like Monkeys add these things, like planning around their early game, like with their laning stage and the items they build and how much regen that demands out of them from the lane, how they go about thinking these things and like adding it slowly into like their natural thought process is really important. Basically, let's say, for example, the 3 things that I think are the most important to note from are the early game items and regen, playing around the range creep, and then playing around the pulls, right? So I can guarantee you someone told them, or, you know, they just figured it out themselves, like, oh, these items are good. Or same with like the range creep. It's like someone told them from the patch notes. It's like, hey, did you see that, you know, range creeps give double EXP? It's like, oh, okay. And then slowly, you know, one person started the trend. They started like nuking the creeps and stuff, and everyone's like playing around these range creeps and so forth. So for them, I'm sure their learning process was a little bit more natural. But if you're trying to add these things into your own game and you're not actually doing them, and you want to start adding them into your game, I think it's really important to try to give yourself like a less workload. Like, try to incorporate these things one at a time, or like make sure you're doing one properly before you start working on the next thing. Because if you try to pile too many things on yourself, then you'll kind of become a little bit robotic in the game, and you're going to start doing other things in the game worse. Like, maybe you're prioritizing the range creep, right? But like, you're just not buying any regen, or you rush boots first, or I don't know, maybe you didn't stop them from pulling at all, and you may have got the range creep, but like, you're getting denied so many creeps that it doesn't even matter, right? So yeah, just a little word of advice. When you're trying to improve, I can guarantee you a lot of these players, it didn't happen overnight, right? It's like Monkeys slowly incorporated these Wraith bands, and I'm sure he lost some games from it because he's focusing so hard on trying to win his lane with these Wraith bands that maybe a game called for like an early Blink Dagger on a hero, right? So, just thought I would make note of that, because I know I get that question a lot when people talk to me. It's like, oh, you know, how do I go about improving? Do I just take all your advice at once? And some people tell me, you know, it's like they went into a game and they're actually losing after they got my advice, and it's like, well, no, what you said was really helpful. It's just, you know, they tried to take too much information in at once, and it's just, I don't know. Dota is a game where you have to have your thoughts flow naturally, and you're never gonna like be in the zone and outplay people if you're just in your own head. That about does it for today, guys. This has been a replay analysis for Offlane, watching Monkeys Forever. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if maybe you want me to do more pro player replay analysis, comment below, or even leave your own match IDs, and maybe I could do, you know, replay analysis of some lower rated players. Or maybe you're a god, who knows. Anyways, that does it for this video, and I will see you guys next time.